We'll see. I'm Davide Sher. I'm one of the SmarTech analysts, and my presentation here will focus on a report that I did. Now it's an update on a report that I did a few years ago on the bioprinting market. Obviously, it's a little different from what we've been talking about in this conference so far, because we've been talking about really very short-term applications and business opportunities, and I think that's fantastic. That's what we usually focus on. With bioprinting, it's most of it is probably further down the line, but it's what I try to do is I try to quantify what this opportunity is for the bioprinting segment as well. And there are some business opportunities that are closer. And it's funny. I mean, you talk about bioprinting, so you're talking about the business of, say, in a way that organs, and it's a matter of life, really, of life and death, and we put a value to it, but we need to, because if there's going to be a bioprinting business, people need to be able to make money from it too, to develop it. So without further ado, let me start. I'm sorry that there's going to be a few effects in the presentations. It's usually recommended not to put too many, but I kind of like to give it a more active appearance. So just to show that it's a very fascinating and exciting segment. So, like I said, this is based on a report that I did now a few years ago, when it's really hard to quantify what the bioprinting business opportunity is at this time, but what I can say is that since 2016, when I started doing the report, a lot has happened. A lot has happened in this segment. So this is what we're going to be focusing on. Last year, I talked more about the technologies that are available and hardware technologies and materials. This year, we're going to talk more about what the opportunities are around these technologies. So a lot more on the applications, I think, than before. So just a little bit about myself. I am a senior analyst for SmarTech Publishing. I also publish a number of websites that cover the 3D printing industry. So I have a marketing agency that helps companies communicate, and we publish a directory of companies to help us track the companies that operate in additive manufacturing. We publish news to help us basically follow the day-to-day, everything that's happening day-to-day, and that kind of helps us with the reports. And likewise, researching a segment helps us find news about what's happening. So keep in contact with everybody, the players, the stakeholders in a segment. So let me. This is a kind of the main numbers that we were forecasting at this time. So as you see, it's what it's called, like a hockey stick forecast. But the thing is, the bioprinting opportunity today is small. I mean, if you see the commercial applications today, they're really, really small, but the potential is huge. So inevitably, and when we see here that we're forecasting now to 2029, we're forecasting 1.7 billion. If you think about any pharmaceutical industry, 1.7 billion is nothing. And so it's not that big. So this, obviously these are numbers these are forecasts, but we try to make it as accurate as possible, and we think this is fairly realistic. And by the way, last year the forecast was stopping in 2027, and everything the numbers that we began forecasting are, that's pretty much what's happening. And what's been happening is that a lot more companies are entering the segment, so that's why we're now forecasting an even faster growth for the long term. I mean, it's a very so. And as you can see, the key opportunity here is the applications. So when you're talking about bioprinting products, you're talking about very small quantities of materials for applications that can have a very high value, and we'll see what those applications are during this presentation. Right now, the bioprinting market, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it's kind of a rapid, if you compare it to the traditional additive manufacturing market, it's a rapid prototyping market. almost not even a rapid prototyping market, because most of the research, most of the use of the technologies takes place at an academic level. So that's the market now. You know, you sell the machines to the universities. There are, of course, a lot of universities in the world, so it is becoming a more and more valuable market. Now, what's happening is companies are starting to buy the machines also to do some commercial research, internal commercial research. So it's becoming a rapid prototyping kind of market. And the goal, as in for all additive manufacturing, is to go towards production. You know, people like to talk about organs. It may not be organs, not for a long time, but it will be production of some bioprinted parts. As I said, it's small. You know, we're talking about small parts that could have a very high end value. So small quantities of material for high value parts. In this segment, we also try to integrate some software, because you know we try to follow the trends of the additive manufacturing market. But obviously, software is you know, bioprinting specific software, and I don't mean CAD software, is a very small, almost non-existent. But there are some examples. So we're starting to consider that as well. Okay, so what I was saying is the growth is accelerating. We are forecasting the growth rate that I'm forecasting for the next 10-year period is 40% CAGR. It's quite high, but it's not unheard of in additive manufacturing. We see the market growing to 1.7 billion. And you know, we've pretty much confirmed the outlook that we had in 2016. Obviously, it's the first half of the report, so it's when the growth is still somewhat limited. But as you will see here, we're tracking the companies we're tracking. The number of companies that are now present in the industry, or that I'm aware of as analysts that are present in the industry, has increased by 50% compared to when I did the report in 2016. So that you know, that helps us you know, try to quantify what the long-term opportunity is. I mean, it is something that companies are investing in. The number of companies tracked now is 89, and there is a number. There are more short-term applications that we're seeing, and we're seeing also as we are seeing in the overall materials market, we're seeing investment from large groups. So there is L'Oreal and Johnson & Johnson making investments in bioprinting specifically, so large groups putting money into this segment. This is from our directory. This is the number of companies that we've been tracking and how they've changed. And, you know, we look at bioprinting hardware companies, we look at bioprinting materials companies, and what you would call the bioprinting services, which we call bioprinting laboratories. At this time, they're mostly within universities, but who knows, this could become a commercial opportunity as well. And then there's other companies, for example, there's stem cells companies that are now focusing on additive manufacturing. There are other types of companies investing into this segment as well. One of the reasons why we really saw a big difference in numbers and in data from last year, and one of the biggest trends that we've seen is the increase of low-cost bioprinting machines, or affordable bioprinting machines, or I think cost-effective is the word. And this has mostly come from a company called Cellink. It's a Swedish company that it kind of did what Ultimaker did for the 3D printing industry in the beginning, or maybe Formlabs is a better example, because they entered the market with a very affordable system, and this enabled a lot of universities that before could not have invested in high-end systems to also acquire bioprinting systems, familiarize themselves with the technology. One very interesting trend that I've seen in more than one university is that the industrial additive manufacturing divisions of companies are investing in bioprinters to learn more about this process, and it's fascinating because it's not entirely different. The process a lot of people who now research biomaterials and bioprintable materials based on hydrogels, actually their experiences come from other materials, like ceramics or other paste-like materials. And one thing that I think we're seeing is that in the next couple of years, or in the past year and in the next couple of years, what we're going to see is a higher than expected number of unit sales for low-cost or affordable 3D printers, which causes, last year I said that this would not affect significantly the sale of high-end systems, and that wasn't entirely correct. I think the number of, for a couple of years, the sale of high-end systems would be affected, but I think in the long run, the biggest opportunity is in high-end bioprinting systems, and that's for two reasons. One is that the high-end systems, they cost so much more, and they have so many more capabilities that they will remain a significant opportunity. But also that companies that are producing the lower-cost systems are now investing to develop higher-end systems. Selling, for example, is doing this, but other companies are doing this as well. So even though you enter the market and you expand the market by making the systems available at a lower cost, in the long run, the biggest market opportunity will be in higher end systems with higher capabilities. And this is a little more accurate chart where you can see the dip in the high-end bioprinter sales that we're forecasting for the next couple of years, but then in the long run, the higher-end systems represent the biggest revenue opportunity. And it's not a huge revenue opportunity because, as we said, the real value, I think, in bioprinting will be in the applications, the higher value, the higher part of the market. That's true for most additive manufacturing markets, by the way. It's not necessarily in the sale of the materials, but it's in what you do with those materials through 3D printing. So low-cost systems, today, I think that the price initially was around 1/10. Now that's changing because even the lowest cost systems are 1/10 of the price of a higher end system. So we're talking about 10,000 for a low-cost system and 150 and up for higher end systems. That's where that's kind of the price ranges that we're giving. But that's changing because even for example, Cellink, I will mention them a lot because they really, in the past couple of years, they've really emerged as a significant leader in commercializing the machines. And what's happening with their system is that they also introduced a system now that is 40,000. So it's getting closer to the higher end spectrum. Okay, so high-end system sales, this is basically what I was saying. So these are the companies that we've identified as far as hardware manufacturing as the key players. In the segment for affordable systems, it's mostly Cellink. There is a Korean company called Rocket. Alevi is an American company. And then there is a few other ones that are also developing systems. And in the higher end system, there is we consider Nscript. It's a company that's probably has one of the most extensive experience, and we will hear from them in the next panel. In this segment, there is Region U, is a Swiss company. Envision Tech is probably one of the companies that has done the most work with their 3D bioplotter system, and then there's other ones. There is Prelis Biologics, which is now a partner, or maybe it was acquired, I'm not sure, by Cellink. And they're introducing a very interesting new technology. We don't have enough time to go into what the bioprinting technologies are here today, but there's some really fascinating ones. I think they promoted it as a volumetric approach to bioprinting. There's Poietis, is a French company that's working with L'Oreal, and Reginov, I believe, is a Chinese company. So these are the materials that we take into considerations. There are different ones. We break them down in the report, but it's mainly, bioprinting is mainly based on two types of materials. The scaffolding materials, so that's mainly polymers, biodegradable polymers, and then there is the cellular matrix materials, which are based on the hydrogels which contain the actual stem cells, so that that can be 3D printed directly or applied on a 3D printed scaffold. It depends on the process. There are several different processes out there that are very similar in a way to the ones to the processes for standard additive manufacturing. So some of them include photopolymerization. Some of them include extrusion. There's different types of extrusion. There's of course material jetting, which we've talked about here. So, okay, so we believe that in the long run, material revenues will surpass hardware revenues, which is pretty unique, but that's kind of what the projections showed us, and that the hydrogels materials will be the biggest revenue opportunity compared to the scaffolding materials, which are generally more affordable, but it's not a huge difference. This is the forecast for bio-ink material sales. We're forecasting, it's a very small segment at this time, especially because it's a research market. So you really need very small quantities of material to do tests, but the idea is that it will become increasingly a production market. So the quantity of materials will also increase significantly as you move into production. So bioprinting inks include combinations of polymers, ceramics. We've talked about them today. In some ways, especially in ceramics and in bones, the two things are very, the standard additive manufacturing and the bioprinting, they really kind of overlap and collide. There's, cells, cell aggregates, peptides, growth factors, hydrogels, scaffold components, and other materials. The processing of the bioink through the bioprinted process requires specifically that the cells, one of the main requirements is that the cells survive the bioprinting process, so whether it's extrusion or photopolymerization. In many cases, and until today, most companies develop their materials, most universities develop their materials internally, and that's also something that's still happening. I think that's what Cellink based their business model on, was an open system that universities could work with their materials on. But increasingly there are commercial bioinks becoming available as the market grows. Exactly, which is what I just said. Basically, commercially increasing availability of commercial bioinks, and we obviously expect higher growth in the long term because driven by a move toward production. So commercial parts. As I said, we've introduced a little overview of bioprinting software. We don't include CAD in this, but so the idea is that, and that was confirmed I think yesterday, is that you would use the same CAD that you're using now for 3D models to do bioprinting models as well. But there are going to be some software that are specific for the bioprinters, to tell the bioprinters how to work, or to kind of like the slicer software. These could evolve into a market opportunity as well, but a much smaller one. I mean, the idea is that it would be only a $2 million market by the end of the forecast period. So very, when the whole market is worth over $1 billion, so that would be, it's really a very marginal segment at this time, but we figure we start looking at that too. Okay, so now right now it's a research and education market, but the idea is to go beyond that. We expect that in the long run, final parts will be the main market driver, the main market opportunity. And what do we mean by final parts? Basically, I think there are four main segments that we're following. One is drug discovery and testing. So using bioprinted tissues to test new drugs. And this is probably the biggest opportunity, and we'll see how it compares to the other ones. The other one is cosmetics testing. This is also something that's already happening. There are commercial applications for cosmetics testing. That's why companies like L'Oreal are investing in this. And the third one is medical devices. So, you know, bone grafts, and other devices that are printed not, you know, with actual biomaterials. So not just the ceramics or the hydroxyapatite, but also materials that are generated from stem cells. And finally, in the long run is the tissue and organ regeneration. That's the final goal. We expect that will be much further down the line, but there are different levels at which you can print, you know, organ tissue. And there are many research projects that are working on this, because the opportunity is so large, is potentially so large. So finally, to look at closer at the applications, the first one that we're seeing is the academic, educational models, research models. So imagine like a biotechnology, bioengineering department. You know, all the research they do, and it much in the same way that an industrial additive manufacturing academic institution studies the 3D printers and the materials. Much in the same way, this is happening with bioprinters. The first commercial application is drug toxicity testing for new drugs and cosmetics testing. These are the applications now. Also, advanced research application. You know, later down the line, and it's starting now too, is advanced research applications such as in vitro organ models and organ on a chip products. You know, bioprinted. One very interesting application, and this is a huge potential market, which we only marginally considered in our report, is the cellular agriculture. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but it's the idea of using cells to produce meat and milk derivatives and egg derivatives. So the idea is to use the cell of the same cell take the cell from the animal and then reproduce it in a lab, and then it doesn't necessarily mean you would need to use bioprinting, but you could use bioprinting to give it a shape that then a potential user would like, instead of just a chicken nugget, which you can make without a 3D printer. But if you wanted to make more complex shapes in the future, this is something that might definitely involve some kind of bioprinting technology. And then in the further down the line, there is some tissue regeneration. So the things that are closer are bone. Bone we talked about. It's a mixture of hydroxyapatite ceramic materials and could integrate some hydrogel, some cellular materials. It doesn't have to, but the easiest thing to do is cartridge, because so cartridge grafts, cartridge parts, because it's a single cell material. So the same problems that you have in additive manufacturing, the multi-materiality, the challenge with multi-materiality you have in bioprinting. So it's difficult to do multi-materials. But cartilage is one material, so that's the closest thing. And I think I'm not an expert on, and we talked a lot about the need for standardization and FDA, regulatory approval, and that's obviously something that's gonna need to be looked at much closer over the next 5 years. But cartilage is something that could be done, so it's really a matter of gaining the regulatory approval for that. And then skin, it's a two material product, so that's also something that can be done, that can already be done today and could become a commercial application in the not too far future. And what I mean is about 5 years from now. A little more long term, we've seen articles, we've seen news of corneas being bioprinted, cardiac valves, blood vessels. These are all products that have been bioprinted at the research level, they're being tested, but they also can be done. I really like this animation with the heart pulsating. And then more long-term, lungs. I think these are the more complex organs, but they're the first ones. The lungs, pancreas, and thyroid, they've been printed. These products have been, these organs have been printed to a degree, all three of them. So it's either printed or grown, but there are companies working on these products now to make them commercially available. And obviously, for the longest term is complex organs. So now you can do kidney tissue, you can do liver tissue now for drug toxicity testing. So that's something that's already been done. That's the main commercial application today. But in the future, there are researchers that are studying how to, increasingly develop tissues that could be implanted. So grafts, liver tissue grafts, kidney tissue, cardiac tissue grafts that can actually be implanted into a human. And there are, obviously also there's research being done on brain and nervous systems. This is the chart for the applications. As you can see, the main applications, and I think we expect them to become a $400 million business, which, like I said, for pharmaceuticals is not that much, but we can't forecast more than that because today it's still very, very small. It's drug discovery and cosmetics. And then there is the medical devices is probably longer term, but the tissue organ regeneration, the tissue organ grafts, we think that can also become a commercial application by the end, a significant commercial application by the end of this forecast, 10-year forecast period. Sorry, yeah, I always go ahead of my notes, but that's basically it. Thank you very much. Like I said, this is just this is just to give you an overview of what's happening. It's not, it's a market that is really small and hard to quantify at this time, but we will keep tracking it, and we will make it into, we would certainly be able to give more and more accurate information as the market develops. Thank you.